Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Senate Education. It is Wednesday, April 14th at a little after 1:35 in the afternoon. We have a pretty full schedule today. We are going to start with having a walkthrough and some testimony on S-134, an act relating to the Vermont State Colleges. Appreciate the Chancellor and her team being with us, and we'll kick it off in a moment with one of the bill sponsors. I then hope that senators are comfortable. If not, we can always do it, postpone it a day, but I would like to advance the Secretary of Education's appointment, confirmation. That would just be a vote of the committee. And then senators and others will recall last week we looked a little bit, we had Representative Christian and Mr. Desmarais coming back with language around diversifying the State Board of Education. And then at the end of the day, we will return to H426, public school facilities in the state. So with that, Senator Hooker, thanks for taking us through, if you wouldn't mind, a little bit of background on your bill. And I know your colleagues in Rutland County co-sponsored this with you, Senators Colin Moore and Terenzini. And after we get sort of the genesis and the big idea, we'll pass it on to Mr. Desmarais.
Thank you, Senator Campion. And thank you, all of you from Vermont State College System, for being here to listen to our request. Senator Terenzini, who's the lead sponsor of the bill, is not available. He has some dental surgery today, so we're hoping that he's well and can come back soon and rejoin the discussion. But first of all, let me say that we understand the stresses that the Vermont State College System has been under, and the effort that the Select Committee, the Chancellor's Office, and the Board of Trustees to address these serious issues facing the future of our state colleges have been working on. The purpose of this bill, S-134, is to allow the legislature and Vermonters to more fully understand the problems, especially as they relate to individual institutions. Where are the pluses and minuses? Where are the profits and losses of the system as a whole and of each campus? The proposed merger of the four campuses may be the way to solve many of the difficulties our longstanding schools of higher education are facing. And S-134 would allow us to know where those difficulties are system-wide or school-specific. So the first part of the bill has to do with the finances and a more public offering of where the finances are for each of the schools, whether it be Castleton, NVU, or VTC, as opposed to the state of the system as a whole. The second part of the bill has to do with branding and the names of the institutions themselves. These schools have been around for a long time, and people know them by their names, especially down here in Castleton, where Castleton was the first of the schools of higher education in the state. So we kind of have a history. We do have a history of that particular moniker being associated with this area of the state, and we see it certainly as a point of pride and also as an economic tool for our area. So our request to have the names of the institutions be at the front of the names of this system is what's driving this. I'm speaking personally from Castleton's point of view. Certainly that's what prompted this bill. But we also recognize that VTC, how many other places in Vermont besides UVM perhaps can we say the initials and know what we're talking about? VTC has been around so long that it's a household name. NVU has made its own brand now after the merger that took place a few years ago. And it seems that to ask schools that have gone through this change already or have not gone through the change yet, to have to do it would be economically a challenge, whether it's an unnecessary expense to change the name, and it would do harm to the time that has been spent branding those schools to draw people from the area, from the state, from the region, from the world, perhaps, as is evident in the number of foreign students that come to Castleton. So we're asking for a continuation of the names of the institutions at the front of the new name, whatever it would be, for the merging system. I think Mr. Demaray is going to take us through the bill section by section, so I won't go on. But that is the impetus behind what we're asking for. First, it's kind of transparency as to the finances and the needs of each of the institutions, and also as a witness to the importance of the names of the institutions as they are.
Great.
So I'll hand it over to Mr. Demaray.
Great. Thanks, Senator Hooker. Appreciate that. Mr. Demaray, we're ready when you are.
Would you prefer I pull this up on screen or look at it separately?
I think we all have it.
Yeah, okay, good. All right, so for the record, Jim Demaray, Ledge Counsel, we're walking through S134. And the statement of purpose of the bill, on page 1, does summarize the three major points that Senator Hooker went through. So first of all, the purpose is to require Vermont State Colleges to annually submit to you its audited financial statements for the prior year, including separate financial statements for each of the university and colleges in its system, with information on their sustainability and enrollment. The second purpose is to require the Vermont State Colleges to publicly disclose its annual budget allocation to each of its colleges and universities, together with the rationale for that allocation. And the third purpose is to condition state funding of the Vermont State Colleges on the requiring that the name of the college or university that currently is used, if it is changed, be used at the beginning of the new name. Going on to page 2, section 1 is amending the statute 2177, which deals with financial reports. And this is new subdivision 2 that says that annually before December 15, the corporation, which is VSC, shall submit to you its audited financial statements for the prior fiscal year, again, including separate financial statements for each university and college in the system. That will include a profit and loss statement, and will include a report on the financial sustainability of the corporation in each university and college over the next 5 years. This is, sorry, my version is sorry. And the full-time enrollment for the prior school year, and a 5-year enrollment trend analysis for each college and university. And then new section G says the amounts of the corporation annually budgets to be allocated to each of its colleges and universities shall be publicly disclosed by VSC not less than 10 days prior to the payment of any allocation or part of any allocation to any of the colleges and universities, together with the rationale in support of the allocations made. And then lastly, section 2 is around branding. And first it has language about the background, saying that the colleges have built a brand within the counties, the state, and beyond, and that students, families, donors, and business communities recognize the brands, and that a change that does not include the current name of the college or university at the beginning would damage this brand and may negatively impact enrollment, donations, and business support. But it's not to say that the purpose of section 3 is to ensure that the corporation does not change the name, as we just mentioned. And then we go into section 3, which is amending statute again. And so first of all, there's a change on line 12, which makes funding subject to section B, which we'll come on to. And B, first of all, changes the names to the correct names of these colleges and universities. And then in lines 3 through 6 on page 5, it says that the corporation changes the name of any college or university in its system to a name that does not include the current name at the beginning of the new name. It will no longer be eligible for state funding. And the effective date is on passage.
Thank you. Any questions, immediate questions for Mr. Desmarais? All right. Seeing none. Chancellor Zadotny, great to see you, as well as Ms. Scott and Ms. Lavasser. I know you're here with your team, which is great. The floor is yours, and I think however you would like to handle it, there are 2 issues that we're talking about. Address them as you'd prefer.
Great, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. We do welcome the opportunity to come in and talk to you. It's always a pleasure to come in and share information about what we're doing at the Vermont State Colleges. So thank you for having us in. And we do understand the concern from each of our host communities and our school stakeholders regarding what the transformation of the Vermont State College system will mean for those institutions and for their communities. We also recognize that change, particularly on the scale of transformation that the Vermont State College system is undertaking, is challenging, and uncertainty creates anxiety. So we completely understand that. And we also recognize that the Castleton community in particular has been vocal about the school's identity and their brand. And so we want to assure you that we care about the same things that you and the Rutland community and all the other communities that host our institutions care about, including maintaining the Castleton campus as a vibrant and attractive campus for students, incorporating the high value elements of Castleton's and the other institutions' existing brands, while also having a marketing strategy that communicates the mission and vision of the new combined entity. We also want to make sure that the new combined entity is fiscally sustainable so that Castleton and the other Vermont State College institutions can continue to serve as economic, social, and cultural anchors in their host communities, and that we do everything with transparency and accountability. Having said that, we do have significant reservations about the bill as drafted for several reasons. Primarily, the bill would really take us in a different direction than the path that we're currently on. And so, briefly, I would just sort of remind everyone that the legislature created the Select Committee on the Future of Public Higher Education in Vermont last summer. The committee was charged with providing, with developing an integrated vision and a plan for a high quality, affordable, and workforce connected future for higher education in Vermont, and to offer recommendations regarding the financial sustainability of the Vermont State College system. And as part of that, we received funding for this fiscal year in recognition of the need to have the Select Committee do its work. The Select Committee issued its final report on Friday. It received unanimous support from the committee members, which did include a Castleton alum and a local business person, Jeff Weld. A copy of the final report has been submitted to this committee. Two of the Select Committee's central recommendations have remained unchanged since the committee first issued an initial report back in December. And namely, that was aggressive administrative consolidation system-wide and restructuring the Vermont State College system by unifying Castleton University, Northern Vermont University, and Vermont Technical College under a single leadership and a single accreditation. Our Board of Trustees adopted those central recommendations at its February 22nd meeting, and a copy of the transformation proposal that was submitted to the board and approved by the board has also been submitted to the committee. Consistent with the recommendations of the Select Committee, the board is seeking to create a single unified institution that is student-focused, that it assures statewide access to academic programs, it strengthens academic program offerings, and continues to provide the high-touch, personalized student support that we're known for. We do recognize the importance of being transparent about the finances of the Vermont State College system and the value of being held accountable to the legislature, given the significant amount of state investment that will be needed for the Vermont State College system to continue to meet the needs of the state and its students. The House, in its budget bill H439, did include a number of actions and reports on metrics that the Vermont State College system is to provide to the legislature, including this committee, moving forward. The actions and metrics that are included in the House budget bill correlate to the recommendations in the Select Committee's report and include that the Chancellor shall establish policies and procedures to implement the board-approved transformation plan as developed by the Select Committee on Higher Education. So the proposed bill would derail the Vermont State College system's transformation, and I'm talking about the Senate Bill 134, by increasing the personnel and administrative costs and also restricting the system's ability to create a truly unified, innovative, flexible, and fiscally sustainable public higher education system by essentially requiring it to maintain the existing status quo, which, as we know, is unsustainable. The state has already invested significantly in the Vermont State College system with the expectation that the system will transform itself, consistent with the recommendations of the Select Committee. And in our view, the bill would make it virtually impossible for the system to successfully implement the Select Committee's recommendations and reduce its structural deficit by $25 million over the next 5 years. So I just want to turn to the specific provisions that are in this bill. So the proposed bill requires that the Vermont State College system provide separate audited financial statements for each university and college within the system with information on their financial sustainability and enrollment. So first of all, the Vermont State College system is one single corporate entity, and it has been since its creation back in the 60s. Its annual audited statements are publicly available on the website. We have a single set of annual audited statements, so this provision would actually impose additional requirements on top of what we are already doing. So it goes beyond maintaining the current status quo to actually impose additional requirements on us. Those requirements would significantly increase the costs of our external auditors and would require us to hire several additional staff members to manage the internal accounting that it would require. So this is asking us to do something we haven't done in the past, and it would require us to create new systems to make this possible. The Vermont State College system's finances are highly transparent, particularly given what's occurred in the past 12 months. So it's again, our finances have been examined, scrutinized, and studied very closely over the past 12 months by the state treasurer, an external consultant hired by the Joint Fiscal Office, Jim Page, last summer, and then the external consultant, NCHEMS, who was hired and worked with the Select Committee. All three reports are publicly available. In addition, there is detailed financial information publicly available on the Vermont State College System website. And that information is available in the meeting materials for the board's Finance and Facilities Committee, as well as materials for the full board. The system's finances, including enrollment data, are shared in public open meetings, and detailed enrollment data is also readily available in the Vermont State College System source books, which are compiled annually and made available on the Vermont State College System website. Moreover, the metrics contained in the House's budget bill include providing detailed information on enrollment levels to the General Assembly, as well as its annual profit and loss statement. I'm going to ask Sharon Scott, our Chief Financial and Operating Officer, to chime in here as well, because one of the major changes we've already implemented in the past year is moving to a system-wide budget. And Sharon can explain a little bit more about how that operates and why that's valuable. And in fact, there's a lot more financial information being shared system-wide about what the costs are and how everyone is managing their budget. So Sharon, if you don't mind.
So today, in fact, as of last summer, the Vermont State College's Board of Trustees elected to create a system annual operating budget. It has always had a system-wide budget, but it has been composed and comprised of each of the individual institutions' budgets. But those budgets are only the unrestricted portion of the institution's funds. They don't look at the other elements of an institution's operating budget. By moving to a system-wide annual operating budget, the board is better able to direct its attention and its resources where it is most needed within the system, augmenting where it needs to the work that is going on. So our ability to be able to do that is to make sure that the institutions are fiscally sustainable and that the board is able to move forward effectively to allocate its resources to meet the goals and objectives of the system itself.
I think it's also important to note that, I mean, again, referencing the reports that I just mentioned, but Jim Page's report, the Treasurer's report, the NCHAM's report, none of these institutions within the Vermont State College system are capable of surviving on their own. And so to the extent there's concern about, and I know we have heard this, but somehow Castleton is the star of the system and somehow Castleton is going to be disadvantaged by being combined with the other two entities. This is all about the survival of Castleton as well as the other entities. So this is not, it's not about winners and losers in the system. The winners, if we can pull this off, this transformation, is going to be the state and the students within the state, because the goal is for us to maintain where we're located right now, to provide statewide access for students, and to also meet the workforce needs of the state by making sure the programming we provide is relevant and it's high quality. So I'm happy to answer any additional questions that you might have. There was a piece on the annual included in this. I can happy to talk about it, but in terms of the annual budget allocation that's also included in the bill. And again, the board right now determines the base appropriation that's allocated to each of our institutions. That's public information. We've had board policy that lays that out. We previously described the history of how those state funds have been allocated, and the fact that the allocation model is currently suspended, was suspended by the board last summer, but we provided that information in written testimony to the committee back on March 18th of 2021. The Board of Trustees will be revamping the allocation formula consistent with the recommendations of the Select Committee, and that's in pages 89 to 90 of the final report of the Select Committee. Resource allocation is one of the most important tools that the board has to make sure that its strategic priorities are being served. Additionally, once we unify Castleton, Northern Vermont University, and Vermont Technical College under a common accreditation, the allocation will change significantly, because at that point there will only be 2 institutions to allocate the funding to rather than the current 4. The other, on a more practical note, the other note I would make with regard to the proposed bill is that it states that no less than 10 days prior to the payment of any allocation or part of any allocation to any of the colleges or universities, we would be providing information about how that allocation is going to be made with the rationale. As a practical matter, we receive the appropriation on a monthly basis. So as written, it would require monthly disclosures, which again would add to the administrative burden and cost of operating the system and make it more challenging to meet our transformation goals. Finally, the branding piece. This probably is the piece that is of greatest concern. The proposed bill seeks to condition state funding on the Vermont State College system, not changing the name of any college or university within the system to a name that does not include the current name of the college or university at the beginning of its name. This seems clearly intended to protect each institution's existing brand in the belief that a name change would negatively impact enrollment, donations, and business support. So it is true that a merger or unification can impact enrollment in the short term, but the Vermont State College system does need to transform in a meaningful and substantial way to become sustainable in the long term. Given the demographic challenges, the number of high school seniors in Vermont and New England is decreasing each year, with a significant decrease anticipated in 2026 as a result of the 2008 recession. Accordingly, the Select Committee has recommended that the Vermont State College system transform to meet the needs of all students. So we're thinking about not only the traditional 18 to 24-year-old students, but also early college, high school students, and also adult learners, which is a population that historically has been underserved in the state of Vermont. Therefore, we're seeking to better serve students where they are, with a learning modality that works for them, on a schedule that works for them, with the courses, programs, and credentials that provide them with the knowledge and skills they need to attain their life and career goals, and at a price they can afford. We're looking to build on our workforce development and continuing education programming, creating stackable credentials and non-credit certificates that enable people to upskill and reskill. The transformation plan includes the creation of a single point of contact for employers seeking further education for their employees and to provide input on programming for short-term certificate programs with clear labor market returns, developing non-credit programming to meet immediate employer needs, and seeding and nurturing entrepreneurship through the curricular and development of specialized programs. So we will be seeking to connect students to meaningful, relevant, and preferably paid internships and work experiences to better prepare them for the workforce and to assist them in covering the costs of obtaining their education. We're also exploring ways to attract businesses and potential employers to locate on some of our campuses to help build working and learning communities and provide paid internship opportunities on campus. So again, we're looking to build relationships with businesses. So again, I hear the concern from the Rutland community about businesses, but again, we do plan to work with local businesses, with employers, and to reach out and build even stronger connections to those that we already have. As far as the donor community goes, when Johnson and Linden were unified, some alumni and donors were initially unhappy about the unification, but through targeted outreach and communications, donations actually increased following unification. And NVU did recently receive a multi-million-dollar gift, which was the largest in Vermont State College's history. Our development and alumni relations staff at the institutions are already starting to collaborate on messaging to donors and how they can strengthen their outreach by working together. We do recognize the strong attachment to institutional identities and brands that each of our institutions has, and we will be seeking ways to honor and preserve the traditions and customs that are unique to each of the affected institutions. However, it is vital to the success of the newly combined entity that we be able to create a new unifying brand and to market its strengths. We are creating a new university with an academic program array delivered across multiple campuses with a single set of policies, business processes, and administrative functions. We plan to create a singularly memorable brand that emphasizes the student-focused mission of the new entity and builds on the Vermont brand to attract students from out of state. So no decisions have yet been made on the name of the new entity or the brand of the new combined entity, and those decisions will be grounded in market research and shaped by data. our marketing teams from across the 3 institutions are currently collaborating on a request for proposals for that kind of market research. So while we will seek to market the new combined entity, this does not mean that we will not be able to market our individual campuses and programs to target audiences. Similarly, the name Castleton will continue to be associated with the Castleton campus, regardless of what the new entity is called, the same way that the names Johnson and Linden continue to be associated with the 2 Northern Vermont University campuses. By combining the marketing budgets and the admissions offices of the 3 institutions, we will be able to reach and hopefully attract more students from within Vermont, from out of state, and internationally. We've also requested $5.25 million in transformation costs specifically for marketing and branding from the legislature. Some of this money will be used to ensure that all existing institution names are easily found and accessible via search engines and college search sites, so that current and prospective students will easily and readily find their way to the new university. So again, in very brief summary, but for us, the bill represents a real shift away from the path that we're on. And we do really have concerns that it could make the transformation unsustainable. It would require us to keep the status quo, and the status quo just is not sustainable for the system moving forward.
Thank you, Chancellor. Committee questions. Guess I'll start, if you don't mind. I'm curious about the name piece. It seems, I think this is the kind of committee, and the Senate likes to be responsive to our colleagues and certainly all of our constituents. And so I'm wondering if we could get to some kind of compromise or something on this. What would be the problem with keeping, given that a couple of our colleagues are from Castleton area, keeping it Castleton University? What's the downside?
So one would be money, and 2 would be confusion, 3 would be accreditation. So with a single accreditation, there will be a single name for this new created entity. So we don't yet have the name for it, but we're calling it NCE, New Combined Entity for now.
Yeah.
But it will have one name, right? And it will be accredited under that one name. So if you call it Castleton, and then I'm just going to make this, Castleton University at New Combined Entity. I mean, that's quite the mouthful.
Sure.
And 2, I think it's going to cause confusion. I mean, it would be, from a marketing perspective, we need to be able to market, come to the New Combined Entity. We have a student focus. We really want to be able to market and brand what we're going to be doing. We're really looking at creating a very different higher education system here. We're really trying to envision it for the future. And so, if we're sort of limited because of the names, I think that's going to cause a problem. I mean, it's going to affect our ability to market and capture the students that we're looking for. And again, there is nothing to preclude us if it's, again, New Combined Entity, just for the sake of argument at this point, to have the Castleton campus at New Combined Entity. You can come, you can play football, you can, do all these things. This is, you can ski, it's great. All this stuff is happening. We can certainly market that to those students that are interested in a more traditional, 18 to 24-year-olds looking for a residential experience and looking for programs that are based at that campus. But again, the programs are going to be available statewide is the goal. So we can market that way. But I think if we're forced to use Castleton University at New Combined Entity, I just think it's going to be a real struggle to be able to do that effectively.
What about just Castleton at New Combined Entity? I mean, the accreditation piece, I looked into this a little bit this morning. I ended up calling Larry, I think it's Shaw at the New England Commission of Higher Ed. And, I just wanted to talk through with him, the accreditation piece. He said, Brian, there are 9 standards to accreditation. Name is not one of them. So I don't see much concern around getting things accredited as it relates to the name. Now, again, this was a 15-minute conversation at breakfast. Perhaps he misunderstood me or I misunderstood him. But it sounds like the 9 standards to accreditation, that could sort of be somehow worked around with the commission. So, you know, I'm thinking to myself, historically, this is, you know, a wonderful campus, wonderful community. People know the name Castleton. Could we get to a compromise? And I know we're not going to get to it right here, but to, you know, again, to Castleton at, you know, new entity university or something like that. So that's just from where I'm at, but, you know, wanting to be responsive to my colleagues and their constituents. Senator Chittenden.
Senator Campion, I had very similar comments. So I see the arguments that you laid out very well, Chancellor Zadatny, on the financial piece and the auditing and everything that you put on the table. I could definitely understand why I wouldn't want to split and create additional financial reporting. But when it comes to Castleton University, I was more sympathetic to allowing for the retention of that name. Can I just ask a clarifying question to the last thing I heard you say, Chancellor Zadatny? Will it not be possible to accredit it as one institution if we allow for the name to be Castleton University? I have dogs. Castleton University at name to be determined. Is that not a possibility? Is that a showstopper for the accrediting body as far as you understand?
I don't believe it's a showstopper for NECHI, but I believe it will be an incredible challenge for us in terms of moving forward with the transformation. I think it will make it even harder than it is right now. I think it will be very difficult to market something where we've got 6 different place names with 6 different campuses before the name. We're very, very small. You know, we're not on the same scale as the SUNY system or somewhere else. I don't think there's a problem with being the new combined entity at Castleton. But I think if we're leading with that, it's going to be a dilution of the message. It's really going to impact our ability to reinvent ourselves and to resell ourselves to our students moving forward. As far as NECHI goes, the understanding I have is that, you know, there would be one entity that has a name that is accredited. If we have students, for example, that start at Castleton University, and then in 2 years' time, they're graduating from the new combined entity, they can request to have a diploma with Castleton University on it. And I know that's an important thing for many students. But, you know, the danger here is that we're going to land up just in tremendous confusion. And we just think it's really important that we have the flexibility to come up with a marketing and branding strategy that really fits with the mission and vision of the new entity and not be constrained, you know, by having to predetermine the names on this.
We live in confusion down here, Chancellor. I mean, we have the Bennington Battle Monument that the battle happened in New York State. So we've worked around it, but I understand your points. Senator Hooker and then Senator Lyons, please.
I was just going to ask the same questions that have already been asked about, is this contingent upon accreditation? I mean, it's accreditation contingent upon having one name. And it seems to me that there must be a creative way to get around this. I certainly understand that there may be some complications and maybe some confusion at first, but it seems to me that there might be a way to come up with some creative way to acknowledge these individual campuses up front.
Well, I think we certainly will want to do that. I mean, there's certainly things that we want to preserve at all of our campuses, and they're going to have different personalities just like they do now. But I do think it could cause confusion to students because, again, if you've got Castleton University at new combined entity, from the Department of Education's perspective, it's new combined entity. In search engines, it's new combined entity. We will do what we can to make sure that students find their way, that are familiar with Castleton and are looking for Castleton, that they will certainly find their way to Castleton as part of the new combined entity. And we will do what we can to honor and market and preserve the things that are unique and special about each of these institutions. But it just is a concern. It just seems unwieldy to have a one entity that is, Johnson at new combined entity, Linden at new combined entity, Castleton at new combined entity. And I don't know, with the Vermont Technical College, they might want to go with, technical college at new combined entity, rather than starting with whatever the new name is and then having that be at the, at the end rather than at the beginning.
Senator Lyons.
So I think the issue is, I think it's an important issue moving forward. Having a change come that feels like it's top down is somewhat confusing and also problematic. And you represent the top. There's no question about it. But then the question I have two questions and I have comments. But so as you're looking at all of this, it would be helpful to hear the process that you're going to go through now that you've heard the significant concerns. And I think they are significant. I don't think they're limited to the 3 senators from Rutland. I think that it goes beyond that. I think there are a number of people who want to know that the identity of these campuses is maintained, because they have become so prominent in our state. So that's one. Then, of course, I went to Rutgers, okay, and Rutgers has campuses all over the place. But we always had to defend ourselves that we went to the real Rutgers, not the satellite Rutgers. And so I think we don't want to put ourselves in that position. But I think we would want to know that perhaps we have Castleton at Castleton, Vermont State, Vermont University, or Northern Vermont University, period. That's the Northern Vermont campus. It seems to me, I'm hearing you talk about advertising and marketing and brochures and internet linkages that might be confusing, but I can't see the confusion. If there are commonalities to all the campuses, there are commonalities, and there may be some really distinct flavors to campuses that can be highlighted. But this is available at Castleton, this is available at Northern Vermont, this is available at CCV. I don't know. So I'm not feeling the same sense of confusion, perhaps. But my question is, what's the process that you may be going through to ensure that there's some public input to this really, I think, really important issue for the citizens out in the state?
Yeah, so again, as I mentioned, we will be putting out a request for proposals to do some market research to really sort of find out what people think of when they think of our different institutions. I think it's important to remember, this new combined entity will be 5,000 students. It's still going to be very small. It is significant costs at the marketing and branding. If we're trying to maintain multiple separate different brands, I think it will be costly and expensive for us to do that. And I think it also sends the wrong message in terms of what we're creating. We're creating a new university that's going to have this very student-focused approach that we want to be available to students of all kinds across the state. We're not reaching out solely to 18 to 24-year-olds. We really need to remarket ourselves to those adult learners and people that haven't found their way to higher education before or need to complete. So we really would like to be able to use the dollars we have as wisely as we can to really tell a good story about who we are and what we can do and our role here in Vermont, the wide spectrum of experiences and programming that we'll have. So we will have the sort of traditional residential experiences, we'll have low residential experiences, we'll have very flexible programming for students that are I just was hearing one anecdote the other day, but of a stonemason in Peacham who's been able to take courses and complete a first year of a degree at VTC because of COVID and because everything's been online. How do we preserve that and enable that person to complete a degree? So we have a lot to do ahead of us. We have an exciting story to tell, and my concern is that this will really restrict our ability to do that. And again, there's no intention here to ignore or not appreciate the history, the traditions, the name, the past. But really, we want to be able to create something new and move us in the right direction and send the message that it's not the status quo. We are transforming. We are doing things differently. It's not the same old, where everyone can just, oh, well, no, we're at Linden, we do things this way here, or we're at Castleton, we do things this way here. So it is, I think, really important for us moving forward to have the flexibility to rethink what we're going to look like in the future and what the name will be.
Senator Hooker.
I guess I'm kind of stuck on the idea that the corporation, the new combined entity, will certainly move in a direction that I think education needs to be moving in. And I appreciate all of the future differences that it will make, you know, the stackable credentials, the connection to business, and certainly being student-centered. But when you talk about a new entity, it strikes me that the new combined entity isn't an entity, and that Castleton University is, and Northern University is, and VTC is. They are entities. They are things that you can see. New combined entity, you're saying that we're going to create this new university system, this new university, but it isn't the university. It's what sort of governs the university. Yes, okay, but how do we differentiate between those things that are, I guess, tangible and the things that are not? And is there a way so that we can maintain that connection between the things that are tangible and the process or structure that is necessary in order to maintain them?
Right. I mean, so we do have some experience, obviously, with Northern Vermont University, because that was certainly two separate physical campuses before that came together to be Northern Vermont University. So while the new combined entity is not a reality yet, it will be once we get to that point in 2 years' time. So I don't know if Sharon or Catherine, if you had other points you wanted to.
I would love to hop in for just a second. I was working for Johnson State College when Johnson State and Linden State were identified by our Board of Trustees as requiring to merge. A top-down activity, which is similar to what's being proposed today, though the work has had substantially greater vetting and conversation regarding the creation of the combined entity from Castleton, Northern Vermont University, and Vermont Tech than what we even saw when we created Northern Vermont University. Senator Hooker, you referred to Northern Vermont University as an entity, which it is today. But in 2016, when we began that conversation, it was not an entity. It was two separate institutions with two very divergent cultures, two different presidents, two different organizational structures, all operating within a single corporation. We brought those groups together. We brought the two institutions together, and through a lot of shared conversation and shared governance, we created a single general education program. We identified where the strengths are for each individual location, and we market those strengths. But what we market more so than that for Northern Vermont University is the strength of the overall institution that you refer to. We are stronger as a system, and I would argue that Vermont Tech, Northern Vermont University, and Castleton will be stronger together as a combined institution in 3 years' time than they can be independently on their own today, and certainly when what they would look like in the future. They are on shaky ground right now, and their ability to be able to come together and create a vision for what that institution will be to move towards working with adult learners, stackable credentials, workforce education, and simultaneously continuing to serve 18 to 24-year-old populations is where they need to head. But it's something that they need to do together in order to be able to do that in a fiscally responsible, fiscally sustainable way, to be able to continue to meet the needs of Vermonters across the entire state of Vermont.
And I'm not arguing that that's not the case. I'm just saying there must be a way to hold up these traditional names if, certainly if the institution sees that as really necessary. And apparently down in this area of the state, people see that as necessary. There must be a way to market the whole entity, this whole new system that's coming into being, and yet be able to hold on to that part of tradition that is important to, at least in this area. And I do believe that it's important to the other areas as well. I mean,
I would absolutely agree with you. Northern Vermont University, both campuses felt that way.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I just want to move us along. Senator Lyons, final question.
Well, I guess it's a question, but so what I've heard the chancellor say is that the bill that we're looking at is contrary to what the board has indicated and contrary to the select committee recommendations. Is that accurate?
That is accurate.
You just shake your head.
Yes,
But
that is accurate.
so and so then the question comes up, what is the timing on getting to some decision about the marketing piece, and that includes the naming piece and how that will be done? I guess, because I'll just ask this stupid question again, what's the timing on this? Because I probably didn't hear it. I also got knocked off the internet for a little while, so I may have missed it.
Yeah, so we're working on that right now. Again, we've got our marketing teams doing getting ready to do a request for proposal to do some market research, so that any decision we make will be data driven. We will take input on that. We don't have a formal process yet with the board, but the board is meeting, if not monthly, at least every 6 weeks, and we'll continue to do that through the summer. So again, we're gathering information at this point. So we don't need to have the name right now, but we recognize the sooner we have it, the better it will be. It will help our marketing and admissions folks as they're recruiting, because they're already recruiting students, for fall of 22 and fall of 23. I mean, they're building those connections with students right now. So it will be helpful for them to know what it is that they're selling to prospective students. So we will be, we are working on a name. We will have a name, I would anticipate, by the end of the summer or beginning of the fall.
Okay, and if we pass this bill into law, that really precludes any of the decision-making or the work that's going on, I guess. Doesn't allow for the data-driven marketing
Right.
analysis. Okay. So I'm starting to feel a little ambivalent about all of this, a whole lot, in terms of sort of putting a barrier up to the work that's going on. Just because so much work has already gone on around all this. With all due respect to my Rutland colleagues,
Right.
It's hard. There's and there's just no question about it. This is so difficult and it is about the people who live in the area. It's also about all of us who identify Castleton University at Castleton.
Yeah.
Well, we want it to be successful, and I mean, it's really vitally important to us that this transformation be successful, and we just want to make sure we have all the tools that we need to have it be as successful as it can be. And again, there's nothing to preclude us from marketing, why coming to Castleton, and that Castleton is a great place to come to, and the campus is at Castleton. I'm sure it will continue to be known as Castleton. We just don't want to be hamstrung in our ability to really design and envision something new that will really serve the state and the students.
Thank you, Chancellor Zanotny. I would, if I could just make a recommendation. I have in the Senate, as I said to Ms. Lavasser yesterday, seen this movie before, where a senator does have a particular local issue that isn't particularly political, is something that's very important to those constituents. There is a real outpouring of need and direction. And I've seen the Senate move to, make these kinds of changes as recommended in the bill. So, I mean, I don't think it's our interest necessarily to do it legislatively, but reading the room, a little bit of my Senate colleagues and my history in the Senate, I would recommend, if you would please continue having conversations with the Rutland delegation, continue seeing if there might be a path forward where this could work, or we could get to some kind of compromise. That would be my hope, and I would certainly appreciate any efforts that you and your team might put in toward getting to that point. So
yeah, we've certainly had a lot of conversations with folks from the Rutland area. I'd be more than happy to communicate with folks in the business community and whoever about what we're dealing with and what we're confronting. Again, the goal here is the survival of Castleton. The last thing any of us want is to lose Castleton. That would definitely be damaging to Rutland and to the state. So we want to make
higher ed hat on for a minute after 16 years. I think my experience would be there are things to make an institution successful, and I'm not sure if the battle to change the name from where I'm sitting is the one that I would personally want to be having. But again, I don't want to make these changes legislatively. I'm not saying we would make these changes legislatively, but I am hoping that you will all continue to work hard toward some kind of compromise. One acceptable compromise for me would be to call it Hooker University. And if we could all agree on that at this point, then I think the conversation is over. But for now, let's put this on pause and return to it. In the meantime, I am hopeful that you will all just continue those conversations as we will with our Senate colleagues. So with that, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Colleagues, committee, we have on the agenda governor's appointments. We've heard from the Secretary of Education. He has shared his CV with us. We've gotten to know him through his hearing, but also through his time with us in committee. So I am wondering if someone might want to make a motion to confirm the Secretary of Education, Daniel French.
Gladly, I would move that.
Thank you. Senator Chittenden has made the motion. Any committee questions or discussion? Seeing none, I think Senator Perchlik, is your preference a roll call or just or not? Would you?
I was told by Jeannie that the process is the same for these as they are a bill. So I think that means a roll call. But
right, a roll call sounds great.
Okay. Perchlik votes yes. Senator Hooker.
Yes.
An unmuted yes. Senator Lyons.
Yes.
Thank you. Senator Chittenden.
I'm a creature of habit, so I vote aye.
I'd be concerned if you did. Senator Campion.
Yes, and I'd like to keep the vote open for Senator Terenzini so he has an opportunity. So if it's okay with everyone, we'll try to reach Senator Terenzini. He may even be watching us now from his recovery room, and hopefully we'll get to him sometime today. If Jeannie, if you'd be so kind as to reach out to Senator Terenzini, that would be great, and let him know that we would like his vote one way or the other for the Secretary of Education.
Okay.
Senator Perchlik.
How do you want to do that? Do you want to wait till we're back in committee, or if he just emails me or calls me, or how do you want to have
I
that?
think I'm comfortable if he were to just put it in an email.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, why don't we just take a quick 5-minute stretch and we'll return to the State Board of Education. Yeah.
Point on that. Do we need a reporter?
I would like to report unless someone is uncomfortable with that. Just I'd like to share it.
that you should report it.
Secretaries are reported by the
Yeah.
chair.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we'll see you in 5 minutes.